Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. Victory to God, victory to the light. So lovely to be able to join you through this broadcast. May God and Guru's blessings go out and lift everyone in heart, mind, and soul into realms divine. Reading from Papa Ramdas, who is a sadhaka, that is, a true aspirant from God. The life of a sadhaka on the Godward path in a world full of temptations is not an easy one. Many souls who are seized with sincere and earnest aspiration for God have been lured away from the quest by the desire for wealth, fame, power, and sex. Absolute purity of thought, word, and deed is the only condition for realizing the truth, in which is so stupendous and sublime. So long as the mind of the sadhaka still lays its hold upon material things, so long as its roots are still firmly fixed in worldliness, so long as it depends for satisfaction on external contexts, he ought to keep a strict sentinel over his thoughts and actions and should take the utmost precaution not to swerve from the path. He cannot trifle with the will of God by saying that whatever he does is by that will. Surrender is a state of consciousness. It is not a mere verbal assertion or even a mental acceptance. To rise above human weakness that seek to keep the soul tied down to its lower nature. The course is to dwell continuously in the divine through remembrance and meditation. The first and foremost quality that manifests in a sadhaka who aspires to be a true servant of God is simplicity. Simplicity in his ways, conduct, and mode of life. He is a tyagi, not by any rule or imitation, but his life cannot be imbued with the spirit of renunciation when it is utterly dedicated to the divine. He is a tyagi, not by any rule or imitation, but his life cannot but be imbued with a spirit of renunciation when it is utterly dedicated to the divine. Happy-go-lucky life in which there is a glamour for worldly things, attraction for the ephemeral tinsels and vanities of life cannot be a passport to the realm of the infinite. It is a life of total self-sacrifice wherein service of God and humanity is both the means and the end. The glorious examples of saints and sages are before us, how they gave up everything for making God their own, how they laid all that they had and all that they called their own at his feet. Such a surrender takes the soul to the highest spiritual eminence, making him feel one with God, who is the absolute reality, immanent in all beings and creatures. If a sadhaka is tremendously determined to achieve divine love, peace, and bliss, his self or ego must go, and all that is done for it must also go. There is no compromise between truth and untruth, between light and darkness. The heart must be pointing always to truth and light, leaving behind untruth and darkness. Make-believe and dilly-dallying devotion is delusive and deceptive. Therefore, O sadhaka, turn to God with all the force of your being. Let his light flood your heart and make you a radiant vehicle for the revealment of his eternal attributes of love and joy. Such beautiful, such perfect words from Papa. How blessed we are to have him in our lives. They have begun at Anandashram the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the birth of Swami Satchidananda. And so I thought I would read to you from the Vision magazine an article by him, or perhaps it was a talk that he gave, What Life Has Taught Me, a talk given by Puja Swami Satchidanandaji on the occasion of his 80th birthday in November 1999. It seems to be appropriate today to evaluate what the 80 years of life of this body has taught me and how lessons have been made use of. The passing away of a closest relation when I was only 6 or 7 taught me that everything in the world was transitory. Though not a drop of tear was shed, the shock then I had helped me to get over all other further shocks. As a student, I learned that I should give my full attention, 100% attention, to the studies at that time, and later to whatever type of work I had to do, forgetting everything else during that time. This brought success in life. Watching different characters and the sufferings they had on account of their attachment to their own relations and friends, their likes and their dislikes, etc., touched me deeply and made me feel that I should not be involved in a life like theirs. I understood the hollowness of life, however brilliant it appeared from the outside, like high position, possession of property, name and fame, etc. As I saw that through all those persons had everything, they were still searching for peace and happiness. Beloved Papa soon made it clear to me that life is God, and life dedicated to God is the true life, and such a life alone can give real happiness. It was after that he brought about the external circumstances in such a way as to synchronize with the inner prompting he had given me to seek him only. He brought me to the ashram to be at his holy feet. From then on, it was a new life and a real life. I could experience every moment what real love was as compared to worldly love experienced so far. I felt that such a life alone is worth living, though there were minor struggles in adjusting to the new life because of a downward pull of the lower nature. While leaving the old contacts for good, I was told refuge in ashrams for spiritual advancement is necessary only for those who have no backbone. Admitted, my backbone was too weak to withstand the pressure of worldly life, and therefore needed protection. But coming here and engaging myself in the seva, or the service of beloved Papa, I found that a much stronger backbone is necessary to successfully perform universal service than what is required to perform ordinary worldly responsibilities. So I preferred a life of meditation and solitude, but experiences and the strong pull of Puja Mataji made me accept the Guru Seva. Perfectly done can take one to the cherished goal, and the way to get perfection in Seva is Seva itself, supported by Nama, repeating the name of God, and Dhyana, concentration upon God. Beloved Papa made me understand what a saint is and how different he is from the ordinary. He taught me that living in the ashram was alone not sufficient for spiritual progress, and that unless it was backed up by intense sadhana, never losing sight of the goal, chances of stagnation would be there. One living in the ashram should never be satisfied with the relative peace that one gets here because of the absence of other usual worries and anxieties. One should not rest content until he was able to attain the peace and bliss of the eternal. He also taught me that we should aim at the realization of the impersonal aspect of God, followed by the universal vision, and not be content with the darshan of God in any particular form, as the former alone is permanent and therefore the highest experience. Another danger to overcome is attachment to personalities in the name of love. Love must be impersonal. In the ashram, he taught me that the more we truly love others, the more our heart expands and the supply from within becomes unlimited. In the ashram, he taught me that the more we truly love others, the more our heart expands and the supply from within becomes unlimited. Our love should be without expecting anything in return, not even love or gratitude. He taught me the joy of giving and how the more we give, the more God provides. I also learned that when deserving persons ask for something, and if he is refused, we are not only wasting a good opportunity, but also not saving that amount, as it will soon be spent in some other way. Only the regret of not having given will remain. He taught me that our worldly attainments are like tinsels, and that life lived to attain God and established in God alone is worth living. Though I claimed that I was doing everything, finally he taught me that he alone who was taking care of me from the beginning, making me pass through varied experiences, and making me to do things only to work out his will through this body in his universal game. He alone is, and there is nothing but he. Swamiji was such a unique personality, and I count it as one of the great blessings that having been able to meet with him and to sit at his feet. I've been transcribing some of my notes from when I stayed at the ashram in 1998 and 99. And this is December 17th of 1998. And I've entitled it Swamiji's Humor. When I first came to the ashram and then was to leave on our pilgrimage around India, I was explaining to Swamiji that I was going to leave in order to come back. Then there was bandied about several different ways of saying this, when Swamiji topped them all by saying, "You are going to come." Such a witty mind. Another time there was some grumbling going on to Swamiji at a satsang about too few people singing, too many people sitting outside the bhajan hall, too few attending during bhajan hall programs at certain times of the day, that the time for closing the bhajan hall was too late in the evening, 9:30 p.m. Each complaint seemed to trigger another, and a feeling of tension was growing in the room. One of the things done at the ashram is that the number of people singing are counted. The number of repetitions is tracked, and a number is arrived at and recorded for how many Ramnams have been repeated. Swamiji asked if only the ones singing are counted, or are all heads counted, whether they are singing or not. He was told it was a head count, not just those singing. He then said with a delightful smile, "The heads are being counted, but not all heads are singing." In describing it thus, it is hard to convey how this created such joy and laughter by everyone present. It was his only response to all the dissatisfaction being expressed toward him. But he melted all the grumbling with his gentle love and humor. This morning at the Goshala, the cow shed or barn, Swamiji sat in the morning light with many devotees standing about. He told a story of Guru's love. And he goes on to say, a Guru loves all, but may show outward preference for some. This creates in the minds of some a doubt. Why doesn't the Guru treat me the same as he does another? He is showing favoritism. Devotees begin with the idea of renouncing all, but soon end up complaining about this and that. Once there was a Guru who had a mother approach him with her son. Guruji, will you take my son and train him? He is rebellious and will not obey me. He cannot live with me anymore. The Guru looked at the body and liked him. He felt compassion because his own mother didn't want him. He said, all right. The boy lived at the ashram and picked up bad habits. He was drinking and carrying on. Disciples came to the Guru and complained, but the Guru did nothing. He showed the boy only love and leniency. Then one morning the boy broke the bounds of all decency. The Guru found the boy lying passed out with a woman, both sleeping on the cold ground. The Guru simply took off his own shawl, laid it over both of them, and walked away. When the boy awoke, he recognized his Guru's shawl covering him. This act of unconditional kindness produced a sudden change in the boy. He immediately went to his Guru and bowed at his feet. The boy said, I don't know why I behave in this way. Will you forgive me? Swamiji then commented, you see, we cannot always know the purpose of why a Guru treats one person one way and some other person another. Swamiji then stood and continued his walk. The sun had risen a little higher during the time and shed more light on us all. Jai Guru. It's such a privilege, as I say, and to be with such a great God-man. Mother had brought me to Swamiji, I felt. And because of that, he was to take me further along on my spiritual sadhana, my spiritual path. I felt that there was more that I had to go through. I had been going through experiences since 1974, when Mother first awakened the Kundalini force inside of me. And it was a tremendous thing, and it took me through so many different experiences. It was my constant and abiding friend throughout all those many years. And even as I worked full time and helping to raise a family and doing all the things in the world, as volunteering as a mediator at a dispute resolution center, the first in Washington State. And so I had a full and very busy life, and yet through it all, this Kundalini force was rising up inside of me, a powerful force, something that was beyond my own ability to control. There were times when I was able to ask it if it would refrain a bit for a little while until I got home, so that I could complete whatever service I was doing at the time. And there was also the temptations, as Mother says, that the crucifixion, the mystical crucifixion that we go through, has the two thieves on either side. One thief is good, the other is bad. One thief is aspiring for heaven and to go with Jesus that very day into heavenly consciousness. The other is deriding and mocking Jesus. And this is the opposing force inside of us. It derides wanting to go into heavenly consciousness, into being lifted up. It distracts us and wants us to focus in on this world. Sometimes it can be bitterness towards this world. Why does this world treat me? Why does this body act in this way? Why do so many things seem to come up and oppose me when I'm trying to serve God and to love God? It's not that we have to go out and find an oppositional force. It's right there inside of us. And then it will manifest in the people around us. I remember when there was someone at work who, for some reason, I never knew why, took a dislike to me and was set out to destroy me professionally. And every day this person was planning to do something, make things up, tell lies, and was telling other people that she was doing this and that she was out to destroy me. It's a strange thing to have somebody so focused on you in this negative kind of way. And yet it happened. And it went on for many, many months. And I was very fortunate that I also had a very strong advocate in my immediate supervisor, or else I wouldn't have lasted through that time. God provided that as well. And so God takes you through so many experiences, both inwardly, and He orchestrates the world around you as well, in order to lift you up, in order to purify you, in order to transform you from the human to the divine. We start out on the spiritual path and we think, well, I'll just sit down and I'll meditate and I'll get lifted up and I'll go into the bliss of God and that'll be it. And we don't imagine all of the experiences that God can take us through. And each one is designed for us specifically, perfectly, in order to take us all the way to God. These temptations, these oppositional forces within and without, are all due to the fact of things that we have done in previous lives. I have been shown this absolutely definitely. I remember when I was struggling and I would have these tremendous cold spells come over me at times. And I'd find myself shivering and shaking and for no apparent reason at all. And then God showed me a previous lifetime. And it actually involves somebody that I knew in this lifetime. And I was a young boy in a war-torn city. And there was a tremendous battle going on. And my father was mentally broken. My mother was dead. And I was taken and I was put into a prison. And it was stone or concrete, something of that nature, on the floor. And I was laying there, and it's been a long time since I had eaten, and I was dying, and eventually I did die. And I was just this young boy. But I had done things in other lifetimes, and God showed me what those were. And I was paying the price for that. And it was a terrible price. And on the outside, you look at it, and you think, why would this young boy be going through all these terrible experiences? We see that we feel particularly keenly so about children because they seem so innocent. Master said one time he was doing a baptism, and the child that he was baptizing was handed to him. And he said he almost dropped him right there and then because he realized that this soul that had come into this body had been a murderer. And he was revulsed by it. He wanted to push it away, but he didn't. And he went through with the baptism. Because all souls are come from God. And this soul must have done something very great to be baptized by a master. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone who meets a guru, or a spiritual master will have their lives transformed. It's all a matter of choice. Do we choose to go all the way to God? There are many more who come to a master, are initiated by a master, who live their lives in such a way that they enter back into the stream of the world. And there's a distaste that they have for the spiritual life now. They don't even want it because they have gone through this temptation and they haven't passed it. And either out of their own desire or out of their own shame or their own ignorance, they don't realize what the spiritual master, what the guru, their teacher, was trying to do for them. And many times they focus their distrust, their anger, their frustration at not passing the test on the master. Sometimes people have gone through painful situations and they blame the guru because of what they're having to go through. And it's because there is not proper understanding that the guru is there and will help mitigate all that they can. But it can't be everything because we wouldn't grow stronger. We need that oppositional force because it strengthens our internal hold on God. We have to get there, and it takes us to it. It takes everybody there to where we get to where we're stripped of everything that we think that we are, everything that we think that we have, everything we think we're able to do. It takes us and strips us down to nothing. And in a human sense, we are really in a tough spot. But spiritually, it's exactly where God was organizing everything to take us. Not because he wants us to fail, but because he wants us to succeed on a spiritual level. And to do that, we must come to that place of complete and total surrender and acceptance of God within. It's only when the cup is completely emptied out that God can begin to fill it up with himself. As long as we are filled with ourselves, our own ideas, our own thoughts, our own passions, our own everything, where is the room for God? He cannot come in. Now, the guru organizes everything, and it's a story that Swamiji told. In this case, the guru recognized what was right for this young man. He's doing all the wrong things, but somehow he gloried in that. Somehow there is something in that, an impulse for him to do the opposite of what others expected of him. I call this a contrariness. And a contrarian will just go and do the opposite thing of what you think or say or want somebody to do. Because that's their nature. And that was this young man's nature. But he was broken of that when his guru didn't oppose him. When he had done such terrible things, and the guru just laid over his shawl over him and the young woman that he was with and left them there. And when he woke up, he saw what unconditional love really was. And it broke his pride. It broke his contrariness. We all have a little bit of that, because we don't want to just be subservient. We don't want to go along with other people's program. We want it to be our own. Perhaps here in the West, we have that more than any place else. We want to be on our own person, and there's definitely a healthy aspect to that, up to a point. But spiritually, at some point, this becomes an obstacle. I have to do it my way. I have to do things in the way that I choose to do, and certainly we have that free will. But God's will is so much superior to anything that we can orchestrate. We can only look at things from our little perspective. And our perspective is narrow. It's filled with attachments. It's filled with biases. What would we know to do, really? Guided by true wisdom, we can try to do the best we can according to our own intellect. And until we have real and true intuition, that's what we must do. But at some point, we lay down all of those intellectual tools. You know, some of the greatest tests that people have are those who are most brilliant because they've been given so much accolade for their brilliance, for their intellect. They relied on it. They benefited from it. The world has given them laurels for it. And yet, it is an absolute obstacle at some point when you come to that place in your spiritual path when you are to surrender. Because your intellect, whatever it is, however great or however little it is so little in compared to God. We are all manifestations of God, and therefore our intelligence comes from God ultimately. But God is so much more. You think about this creation. You think about the plants. You think about the animals. You think about all of nature, celestial movements, how tremendous they are, how powerful they are, and how much intelligence goes behind that. It is said that in the cell of a human body that there are 20,000 functions going on. Imagine that. And when you see pictorial displays that show what goes on in the cells, they look like small cities. And all of this going on inside of one cell, and there's so much intelligence behind it. So it's tremendous, really, it is. And then you look at how this universe has evolved, and the stellar systems, and the galaxies, and it's really, really incredible. And it's beautiful. And scientists can spend their entire life studying just one little aspect of creation and not understand it all. That is the kind of intelligence that God has. And when you go into meditation and you get quiet in yourself, you become still, that intelligence can flow to you. It can come in many different ways. It can reveal itself as a truth that a child could understand. And yet you realize it on such a deep level. You understand it in such a profound way, in a way that you have never considered before. And it moves you through and through. Every cell of your being seems to ring out with that truth. And you go to tell another person about that truth. It may be the love that you feel throughout your entire being. And then you realize what Jesus taught, what the Buddha taught, what Krishna taught, what so many of the great spiritual masters have taught about divine love. And you realize that all the words that you have heard are both true and inadequate in the task of conveying that beautiful, that marvelous truth. And this is why it's so difficult to convey exactly that state of realization. It cannot. Words can never do it. They can inspire us. They can lift us up. They can point us in the right direction. But they can't give us the experience itself. That has to come through our own willingness, through our own efforts, and ultimately through the grace of God. This is the most tremendous path that you can possibly imagine. And it has the greatest promise for happiness, for fulfillment, for realization, for wisdom. And yet, when you present yourself to God, and he takes us into the stillness, there may not be any activity at all. There may not be any thought. There's a fullness there. There's an awareness. Sometimes people get the idea that realization is a nothingness. And so they try to make their minds blank. And it's not good. It's not good. Because this is not it at all. To go into the stillness of God, everything is there. All thought, all life, all power. But it's completely equaled. There's no movement, there's no image, there's nothing at all. But yet everything is there, you see. Now, these words don't make any sense on one level. You try to make sense out of them. But when you have the experience, you realize the truth of it. And so you don't have a blank. You don't have a nothingness. You have everythingness. But it's completely still in a still state. And it's so beautiful and it's so wonderful. And you realize that all activity is an expression that comes from that still state. But no activity can contain everything that that still state does. And that is where you go beyond, as Swamiji talked about here. Going beyond into that stillness, into that still state, where there is the everythingness of God. So you see, we were given the greatest tools. We can chant God's name. It's such a wonderful way to go to God. The mind has to be thinking on something, doesn't it? And if we don't put it onto something, it'll revert back to this world. It always does. So we put it on this simple little Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram. As Papa sang it, Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Jai Ram Om. 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 And I used to sing that, and I'd only sing it for a little while out loud because I wasn't somebody who talked a lot and my voice would get worn out. And then it would go inside. And later on, I read where Papa actually said that was the better place to do it mentally and not all the time out loud because that took you more inside. And so I'd be singing it and I'd be feeling the bliss start to grow inside of me. I'd start to feel the upliftment. And it was true. And it took me closer and closer to God, and it helped to purify me, body, mind, and soul. And this will be true for everyone. And so Mother taught this to us. And this is something that we can take, and we can do it anywhere and everywhere. And then Master gave us the great Kriya Yoga. And that concentrates in the spine and the brain like nothing else that I've ever seen. The movement of this beautiful life force moving through the spine and the brain and bringing it into complete and equalness, if that's a word, and it into that stillness. Just the same as Om Shri Ram will bring you into the stillness. Just the same as Hong Sa will bring you into that stillness, you see. So we're given these different techniques and we put them into use. We practice them with sincerity and love, but it has to be backed up by also right action. We have to live a life of purity. Now we live in this world, and so we have to participate in this world. And what keeps us safe is God's name, is concentrating our minds upon God. Ramakrishna talked about that there's the jackfruit, and the jackfruit's very sticky. And that before you cut into the jackfruit, you cover your hands and your arms with oil Otherwise, it's very difficult to get it off you. But if you first coat yourself in oil, then it's easy to wash off. And he said, God remembrance is like that oil. We put it on, and then things may get on us, but it's easily washed off. It just slides off then, like Teflon. And so you have God remembrance, you love God, you serve God, you chant his name. You do Kriya and you go into deeper states of meditation, and all of this is immersing you in God consciousness. And you will go through those oppositional forces. That is true. But you coat yourself in the oil of God remembrance. And as you do that, nothing sticks to you. By that I mean you may enter into this world and participate in it. And at the end of the day, you sit down to meditate. And if you have been having God remembrance all through the day, when you sit down to meditate, you easily slip into God consciousness. But if you hadn't been remembering God properly all day, then you have a tug of war. Then you have a struggle on your hands, because the world remains with you still. You are attached to it, and it attaches itself to you as a result. So to love God more than this world is that oil. And the oil protects us and keeps the world from sticking to us. And then it is our time to just be with God. You know, it's such a wonderful privilege. We really need to think about how we enter into our meditational state. Sometimes people do it with a feeling of obligation. Well, I promised to do this twice a day, which is true. And so this is my time, and I just need to get this over with so I can get on with other things. We need to realize that we are entering into sacred space, that we are opening ourselves up to infinite potentiality, that we have had to give ourselves to the world, perhaps through service all through the day, but this is our time just to be with God, just to love God, just to open ourselves to what He has for us in this moment. And what a tremendous opportunity that is. What a tremendous moment that is. To make it special. Perhaps we have an altar and we have a couple of candles, some pictures, some incense. We are entering into our sacred temple. We take the shoes off that represent worldliness and we leave them outside. And we go inside and we say, Lord, it is I. This is our time together. And I have entered onto sacred ground. And I have entered into the ancient temple. What do you have for me today, in this moment? And now I open myself not to the things of the day, not to the things of the world. All of that is set aside. I want to know something about you. I want to know who you are and to merge my little self into thy great self. So let us follow in the steps of Master, of Mother, of Papa, Swamiji, the great ones. Let us enter into our temple, seal the things of the world out, and immerse ourselves into that sacred space. Before the time was approaching when we're going to have this time together, God took me deep inside of Himself. And there's just such a profoundness to entering into that sacred oneness with Him. And there wasn't any big revelatory thoughts or anything like that. It goes beyond that. Thoughts are actually of a lower form than communing with God in that perfect being. It's enough just to be in that being. There's really no place you would rather be, nothing you would rather be doing. And he immersed me into himself. And for that, I have all the gratitude that I could possibly muster. Now, this is not just true for me. It is true for all. We might all enter into that sacred temple. We might all know that divine presence. And through that presence to be perfected, to be brought into that most holy state of our oneness with God. So let us meditate upon Swamiji. You can read the Vision magazine online if you like, from the Anandashram website. It's wonderful to be able to click on and be able to read it. And I highly encourage you to do so and to feel the grace of these great masters flowing to you. To read things from Master, we are entering into this holy sacred season we call Christmas. And there is so much about shopping and buying gifts, and unfortunately, there's so much emphasis on this. The greatest gift that you can possibly have, the thing that you can find underneath your tree, the tree of the spine and the brain, is your Christ self. What greater gift can there be than that? And it doesn't tarnish with age. It doesn't break or run out of batteries. But it's something that will be with you always. So let us honor this season. We can enjoy the merriment and the social aspects of it. Nothing wrong with that. As long as we don't ignore the real reason for the season. And to choose Christ, to choose the perfection that is born in man, in order that man may become God-man. So let us do so. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram. Om Shri Ram Jai Ram Jai Ram. Victory to God, victory to God, the light. And God bless you.